Hello, I'm Russell Quirk, and here I am back again with our second battle on behalf of the Property Investor Show. The Property Investor Show is this year, once again, 1st and 2nd of April at the London Excel Centre, where there will be in excess of 90 exhibitors and around 5,000 prospective and current landlords, all converging on one place to talk about all things property investment, hence the name of the show. So whether you want to meet with investment analysts and advisors, estate agents, house builders, software and lending providers, they're all there in one place from April the 1st and 2nd over those 2 days at the London Excel Centre. And it's free, so get on down there and see what's going on. But as part of that, the Property Investor Show guys have asked me to undertake a couple of debates or battles, as we're calling them. You'll remember that we've already had one, which was the argument of North versus South. Where's best to invest? Is it the North of England? Is it the South of England? And this one is with my friend Lee Martin here, who I'll introduce properly in a second. And we're going to be debating the difference between the case for new build investment, as in investing in new homes, or resale homes. So Lee, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Russell.
So Lee, explain to us who you are, who you represent, and what your business is and what it does.
Sure, thank you. The business that I'm in is New Homes, Res Dev. I've been in that for 23 years. I've moved over recently to the prop tech world, to an established company called Unlatch, which you can probably see behind me.
That's the brand. The brand is Unlatch.
The brand is Unlatch. The name of the company is Unlatch. Founded in Paris a little over 3 years ago. Launched in the UK in October as the 6th country we're in. Why did I move? From the love of what I've always done and sold a company to some big corporate national agencies, is because I've been an advocate of speeding up the new homes process. And that's what Unlatch does, and that's what it's successful in. Digitizes all developers or new home specialist agents, all their developments in one platform, centralizes everything, and it accelerates the new homes process all the way through to the defect period and customer care. And it's proving to be not just required, but looked upon very graciously with the sign-ups that we're having.
So as an essential tool for developers, as I understand it, but also for developer clients, right?
Correct. So we've had a mixture of sign-ups in terms of, I would say 90% are developers, and we're talking national house builders all the way down to medium-sized builders, and some new startup developers, and that's all around the country. The last one we had is in Manchester. So we're traveling around, but yes, but we also have signed up some specialist new homes agencies who have separate departments, where they are not only winning pitches because they have Unlatch and the technological aspect of what we do, but it also kind of creates a stakeholder transparency between everyone involved. So the developers can log on and see what their agents are doing, and vice versa. And there's just pure communication. But the most important part is it helps get the developers their money early, which is
that will be music to the ears of every developer watching this, and indeed every developer, I'm sure, that goes to the Property Investor Show. Yes, getting money sooner has to be the #1 underlying kind of motivation for developers, particularly in the world that we're just kind of we've experienced over the last couple of years, I guess. So
absolutely, but for investors as well, Russell, it's also improves the customer experience and journey, which keeps the buyers there, but they're being communicated to all the time, and it makes them actually have a better experience to go back to that developer.
Okay, and how can people find you? What's the domain name of the business?
It's www.getunlatch.com.
Mm-hmm.
Whichever country you're in, it will come up with the country that you're looking in. Yeah,
or find you yourself on social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. So
I'm everywhere.
Good. Okay, right. Look, let's get down to the nitty gritty then. So look, I'm going to argue that an investor is far better off buying a resale home. So that is a home that's established, a home that's already been lived in. And I guess, look, one of my reasons is just simply choice. There's 240,000 new build homes built a year, but an investor, when it comes to choosing what to buy, clearly therefore has a lot more choice of resale, because there's already, whatever there are these days, 1.5 million properties listed for sale every year of a total housing stock of 20 million. So surely I just win the argument on choice, Lee, don't I?
Yeah, that's it. I'm going back on paternity leave where I was wrong. It was great to chat, but well, actually, I've got 1 or 2 points for you, Russell.
Sure you have, mate. I'm sure you have.
You, as an investor, which I am myself as well, I have a couple of properties. I want to look at my yields, which inevitably means your annual costs, your outlays. So I'm sure you can't even argue with me now that the energy efficiency is going to save you quite a bit of dough. I think it's about £600 a year you can save, and that is all coming away from the tax man.
Well, in terms of energy costs, and of course, the energy costs, in fairness, are through the roof, right? We all know that. So I think energy efficiency and energy costs, must have increased their way up the shopping list of investors, in fairness to your argument, as being much nearer the top of that criteria list, right?
Yeah, I think so. And now, as we know more than ever, with everyone probably at the moment thinking, what kind of meter readings should I put in right now? But yeah, being energy efficient for new homes has always been a key factor. But like you say, now more than ever, it's people are worried about it. If you're an investor, you might argue a bit more cash rich, but we have armchair investors, as I've called it, who might just be buying one or one with a friend at the start of their investor journey, and every penny counts. Yeah. Such as with new developments, we know that if Mr. and Mrs. Bloggs are selling their lovely apartment because they're downsizing even more or moving abroad, they're going to only accept what they want to accept. Developers, they don't have to give anything away, but they can give incentives. Stamp duty paid, great, especially as an investor with that extra 3%. Extra wardrobes that aren't fitted, carpets, solicitors' fees, whatever. There's definitely some monetary rewards there as well.
So I guess, you're arguing that there's more, or rather less emotion on the part of house builders, so that they can be more transactional, whereas sellers of resale homes, particularly where the market's been so good over the last couple of years, are bound to be a little bit more precious. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's their home is where the heart is. It's their biggest asset that they own. To the developer, it's an asset, but it's another unit in potentially a concrete jungle block of apartments where they've got 50 of exactly the same. They want it to go. So if we have to pull in a few grand and it still meets our bottom lines to get it over the line, then why not? The secondhand owners, as I call them, secondhand, they can either choose not to sell if they don't get their price, or there's so many, money's still cheap to borrow. Maybe we do a buy to let that out and draw some money out and buy our next place that way.
Okay, so what about cost? We all know there's a new build premium, so new homes cost more money. So if I'm an investor thinking about putting my pounds, my £200,000, let's say, into an investment, proportionally, if I'm going to buy a brand new 3-bed semi on a new housing development in Hertfordshire somewhere, I'm going to pay 110% instead of 100%. Or in other words, I'm going to pay a premium versus the 10-year-old property that I might otherwise buy on the resale market. So how do you contend against that disadvantage?
So it's a good point. It's a point that has come across to me or my sales teams over the years. You can't get away. There is a premium. I've just released on, I shared on LinkedIn some stats that up in the Northeast, funny enough, they hold the highest premium there is, and London is one of the lowest. However, that premium, I've always said in a nutshell, there's one way to easily explain it. You go into a second-hand home, established home, whatever what you want to call it. Normally, you're going to have to pay for new flooring, redecorating, bathroom, a kitchen, garden, if it's a house, or putting the terrace back or the balcony back. That, I feel, is a massive chunk, if not all of it, maybe even less than the actual premium that you're paying to put that right. If you're an investor, it depends what type of investor you are. Are you an investor just to put a lick of paint in and get them in, but then you've got costs to manage and maintain The maintenance is obviously going to be lower because you have a 10-year guarantee with a new home, and everything's built under the 2010 Consumer Code. So with that warranty and a defect period, if anything goes wrong, you don't have to put your hand in your pocket. And I think that's part of the premium that you're paying towards as well.
Yeah, no, I guess that makes some sense, that the unintended consequences of buying a second-hand home and the costs that perhaps you don't think about. You might go and look at a second-hand home and think, yeah, it's lovely. But yes, a lot of buyers are going to change kitchens, bathrooms, floor coverings, and so on, which obviously you don't have to do in new builds. I think, going back to the energy efficiency point, I think, you know, your argument is, when it comes to landlords and property investors in particular, is actually quite a compelling one, because we all know what's coming down the tracks, which is that portfolios of buy-to-let properties are very soon going to have to be rated EPC C rating or better. That law is about to be implemented in the coming months, maybe a year or two. So the average cost, as I've read it, is going to be that landlords have to stump up something like £10,000 per property to get that property to where it needs to be in terms of that rating. So I guess with new builds, I'm kind of making your argument for you here, but
yeah,
with new builds,
have my drink.
with new builds, you don't have to worry about that, because the vast majority of new builds are going to be C or even B rated, because building regs dictate it, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of my first investments, I say investment, it was the first property I bought, which was from a developer, an apartment I lived in for 10 years or so, which I've enabled to keep and rent out. I think it was during the lockdown. I won't tell you which lockdown because they've all merged into one in my mind, but I had to get a new tenant in, and I was advised by the agent who I used to work with, this is coming into effect, let's get it up now. And I had to do that, and it cost me more money than I wanted it to cost, you know. And being a landlord is difficult enough as it is now with the taxes and things like that. So yes, that was marvelous, and you don't have to do that. Same with the electricals and things like that. It all needs to be up to standard, and that's where the new homes helps you. It doesn't mean that you can't use an established home and get it up to scratch, but it's just another cost eating into that yield.
Yeah. All right. So another argument that I'm going to make is that the locations of new build homes are not conducive with renting out. So in other words, a lot of developments that are built on, you know, old brownfield sites or military sites, whatever it might be, end up being inconvenient for public transport. We know that, look, not every rental, not every property that's rented out is required by the tenant in that property to be 5 minutes from the station or 2 minutes from a bus stop. But do I have an argument there, do you think?
Well, I think you do, partly. I think you just kind of said it yourself, that you've got different demographics wanting different things out of their rental property that they're going to move into. So new homes, I would say, that same split of percentage of people who want the station or the local amenities is probably split the same way as where the developers are building. Because I would say most of the national house builders or first-time developers are looking for as many boxes to be ticked, especially since lockdown, because location has been a massive thing. You've got, location was always the biggest. Now it's outside space, I think, has just from feedback and what I do, has become almost higher than the location. People don't want to be stuck inside if something like this ever happens again, which is probably why we've seen a huge migration over the last couple of years of moving from London to the outer areas where you've got better schools potentially. Yeah. But yeah, I think exactly, you've got a good argument. But I would say, from when I have in my 23 years priced up a development per unit for a developer, whether it's 1,000 units or one big house, it's very important to them when they're buying the land where it is going to be and where their buyer profile is coming from. So if it is a buyer profile that isn't that interested in commuting, then great. But yeah, I think there's a good argument, but I think it can work both ways. Yeah.
And of course, there's the counter is that often with big developments, there's lots of money that's thrown around in Section 106 agreements. So, you know, I remember from my days on the planning committee at my local council that, you know, if you were agreeing planning permission on a 50-unit scheme or a 100-unit scheme, a lot of money had to be commuted, not just for social housing and play areas and so on, but also for highways and for a contribution towards public transport. And of course, the bigger the development, particularly these garden villages and garden towns, that the government have talked about for the last 10 years and never actually built. But if they did, and if the NIMBYs didn't get in the way, frankly, that's another argument, another debate.
Yeah, that's another day.
But actually, you'd have a lot more in the way of public transport infrastructure and additional stations and so on, because that money that comes from the developer as a consequence of getting planning permission then goes directly into the infrastructure that benefits that particular new community.
Absolutely. Where I live in northwest London, I have developments around me where they've had to put in schools. These are big developments with 4 national house builders taking sections each. They've had to put a school in. They've had to re-put in money into the infrastructure of the station, the local station, which the trains used to run. It was a station just off of the main line and used to have 1 train every hour, but now there's 7 every hour. So things like that. Shopping centres. I've had a scheme where a Sainsbury's had to be built, for instance. That was in Stanmore in northwest London. So I think
the infrastructure gets created around those big developments. I
think so, and new villages. As you say, the people.
And Lee, do you think simply, regardless of the arguments that we've kind of rehearsed here over the last few minutes, regardless of that, do you think there are simply investors and landlords that prefer to buy new build just because they're easier? You can kind of let it and leave it almost.
Exactly, literally, and I have that written down here. You've got a blank canvas. You've arguably got better specifications. You don't need to start upgrading anything in there. And it saves time. Especially when you're using a platform that speeds it up. But regardless, you're meant to exchange in 28 days.
Nice plug there. Nice plug.
Yeah, I thought so. The ultimate part is as well, you can buy off plan, right? So many investors that I've made lots and lots of money for over the years, they like the fact that we can ensure that there's going to be no period where the property is empty, because we can start marketing it before you've even exchanged. Or let's say exchange, you've got another 6 months to completion, a year, 1 month. You've got that time to have that tenant set up, ready to go in on that day, knowing that you've done your snagging period in between. So there's no massive like mistakes coming or emergencies that you're going to have to get called out for. It's also, you don't necessarily have to pay for the agent to manage, because if you're buying an apartment, I did that on one of my new homes for the first, and this was probably me being naive, but after 2 years, I realized nothing's going wrong. Everything's under warranty.
There's nothing to pay for.
Yeah. So I think a time and that notion of not having any months empty. Obviously, that could happen later down the line, the second tenant coming in. But yeah.
Okay. All right. So look, I think just to kind of wrap up, I don't think there's a compelling argument not to buy new build. I think new build, it sounds like, suits a certain type of investor, perhaps those that don't want to be bothered with maintenance. They certainly don't want to be bothered with uprating accommodation to increasingly onerous government standards. And maybe the answer is, look, if you're a landlord that is going to have a reasonable sized portfolio, that you mix it up, that you'd end up buying a combination of resale and a new home. So I think, Lee, we might call this one a draw.
Okay, I think a couple of the arguments you said, that was compelling and kind of, so I'll let you have a draw on this one, Russell. We both don't like to lose, but I was going to throw in that if I was looking to rent somewhere and I had a pretty beautifully brand new, that no one has ever used, the toilet, let alone, let's forget that builders sometimes.
Do you think people are bothered by that? You think?
Well, I was actually going to give you an anecdote that I one of the first properties I ever.
It's not a personal anecdote of you on the toilet, is it?
No, it's not this time. That will be later, just between you and I. No one wants to hear that, but if they do, please write in. Yeah. But yeah, no. If I was the first investor I ever sold to, when I just started out in the industry, they said, I'm looking at this or a second-hand one. The reason I'm going for this is I want my clients or my tenants to know that no one else has used the shower, has used the toilet. I didn't want them to know that the builder, I had found a little present in there earlier, because sometimes the contractors might leave something there rather than going
this
down.
debate is going down a road that I hadn't expected it to.
Maybe we'll leave it there and we'll call it a draw.
So, but in seriousness then, do we think, and I never thought about this genuinely, so one of my arguments was that there's a new build premium and therefore the landlord pays through the nose for a new build property. Do we think there's a lettings new build premium in terms of rent?
Yeah, I had this discussion with my old lettings team actually, and they always said that it's easier to show a new block because even the communal areas are clean and tidy and new.
Yeah.
And then the service charges are higher, therefore people are getting more out of it. And obviously the landlord pays the service charges, but you're getting it cleaned more regularly. The gardens are looking stunning, or the balconies are more often there than not from older builds. So I do think that you've just stumbled across what I call, in a nutshell, the reason why I've just won this argument. So thank you very much for helping me out there, Russell.
Well, let's leave it there and let Lee believe that he's won the argument. Look, Lee, seriously, thank you very much. That was a really interesting, balanced debate, I think, on the pros and cons of new build, as in property investment, versus investing in resale, or as Lee put, some second-hand homes. Call them what you want. Right, Lee, thank you very much. So look, Property Investor Show, as this is a kind of precursor to, this is recorded a few days before the Property Investor Show kicks off at the London Excel Centre, 1st and 2nd of April. I think it's set to be the biggest and the busiest one. They did return to the Excel Centre in October last year, but of course that was in the dying embers, if you like, of COVID restrictions. And of course now there are no restrictions, so we're expecting it to be busier and busier. There's about 70 panels. I'll actually be hosting a couple of them. So obviously they'll be well worth in themselves coming along to watch, but lots of experience, lots of expertise, lots of professionals there that you can kind of listen to, meet and bounce off of. So Property Investor Show, Friday, April the 1st, Saturday, April the 2nd. Hope to see you there. Lee, thanks again.
Thank you very much.